Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, guys, we're going to be talking some astrology. It's been a while since we did, at least in videos, as we do talk astrology every day.
We sure do.
Yes. And we want to thank our Patreons before we get started, all those that are supporting us over at Ko-Fi, where you could do a one-time donation to keep the channel afloat, or monthly, just like you can over on Patreon. Do check out Medicinal Foods. Use coupon code EEA and get a discount. And it does support the channel. And also, there's lots of stuff there that can help you with detoxifying, purifying the body, strengthening the immune system, which we all need in these times.
So important in these times, yes.
So what are we talking about?
Today we are going to speak about nakshatras.
So what is a nakshatra?
I need to explain this better because I recently just did a chart for someone, and I did a poor job explaining what the nakshatra is and the importance of it in our lives. You know, the nakshatra is the star rising in the east when you were born. So in this kind of astrology, the time of birth to understand your rising nakshatra is super critical. And what I believe they are is each part of the sky has a star, and you know, like for example, we can see Chitra on the screen. Chitra is a star and also a being, and Chitra has certain personality types, and I think when people are born under these nakshatras, their personality mimics this being, so it gives us a whole lot of information about who we are. It's kind of like a blueprint.
Yeah, so these are basically constellations, and then this gets into exactly how as above, so below, as within, so without. Just like each one of us is composed of trillions of cells, and yet we're seemingly a singular entity, but that again is more of a seemingly. Reality is much different than what we've been brought up in the West to believe. Every one of these groupings are distinctive personality types. And before we go any further, I just want to talk a little bit about consciousness and the relativity of things. Every star may be a sun to someone. So this is a quote from Carl Sagan. When you look up and you see every star, again, recognize that most of those probably have planetary systems going around them. Chances are, relatively high that there's life around many of these, if not the majority, because life is the constant. It's not the, it's not the extreme event like we were made to believe that, oh wow, just the absolute perfect conditions that just happen to rise on this one little planet. Of all those, just an infinite number of stars out there, infinite number of planets out there, and we just happen to be the only one where life came. No, that's complete falsehood. Everything we see is created for life to explore. And so every star is giving life to beings out there. And in fact, every man and every woman is a star. We all are stars. When we look at orbs, many are familiar with the concept of orbs. Often you can see faces in them. Why? Because when we're out of the body, this is us. And each orb differs in brightness and in size. And yeah, you could still see faces in many orbs. So think about, the size of these orbs. Many of these orbs are small. Many of them would be the size of maybe a tennis ball, a grapefruit, maybe smaller, maybe bigger. I've seen some bigger than basketballs, and yet they're individual beings, every single one of them. So if this is kind of like what a typical human spirit looks like, imagine the beings of these stars that we see in the sky. Every single planet is an alive entity, a consciousness. There's consciousness all around us. So think of the grandeur of these beings. Think about how far along these beings are on the evolutionary path, on the spiritual evolutionary path. Look to 3 here. So on this number 3 here, we could basically make out Jupiter And then you have Wolf 359, the Sun, and then here we have Sirius. It's all relative because actually, there are stars that are so big that we could fit, tens of thousands of our star in them. They're that big. Every single one of these is a conscious being. Now, these are the true Elohim. These are the true masterful, amazing, wonderful, incredible intelligences that support billions of different life forms, trillions of different, infinite number of different life forms.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's just take Earth, for example. She has her own personality. She has her own knowledge and wisdom, and she helps support all of us. And she gives us nothing but abundance, nothing but love, nothing but caring and understanding. And all of the information that we have flows through her, and through her, can flow through us. So it's just a vast amount of information and intelligence that's going into one place.
So astrology, and we talk about Vedic astrology, which takes into account the tilt of the Earth. And from our videos, if you watched it, the tilt of the Earth, what we have gotten in our understanding, it came into being when the moon was placed where it is, because the moon was not always there. And so the Earth is tilted at just about 23.5 degrees. Vedic astrology takes this into account, where the Western astrological system doesn't. So we feel it's more accurate. And again, it's the programming of the matrix that we are in. So everything is relative to the position of where we are compared to everything else. Each one of these groupings, these constellations, and each individual star has its own personality, just like each individual being has its own personality. And in case you haven't seen what a Vedic chart looks like, this is what a Vedic chart would look like, with the first house here, and then it goes counterclockwise. Second house, third house, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it looks a lot different from other charts. This is the kind of software programming. It's very similar to what I have.
This is what Cindy uses when she does her charts. And each chart takes Cindy typically, I would say, 2 to 4 hours. Well, it varies. It depends.
It varies on the placements of the planets and how much layers of information I go through.
Yeah, typically, as far as the background time to put it together, about 2 to 4 hours. And then when we actually do it, we do a session with it, energy work, biofield tuning, soul alignment, and the sessions usually run about 45 minutes to an hour when we're covering the chart. So the total time invested is usually about 3 to 5 hours per person, just to give you a background. And these are the nakshatras. And they're basically, as you can see the different symbols. So, there's the crab, so there's Cancer. So when we see these nakshatras in Cancer, and portion of this one is in Cancer, and a portion is over in Gemini.
Right, so it just narrows down even more from our zodiac sign to understand our personality, understand what makes us click. And then each nakshatra has, 4 padas, or 4 quadrants, and we break down the personality even further. I feel in this life, one of the most important things that we can do is self-realization, because when we understand what makes us tick, or when we can see ourselves from a third-person perspective even more clear, that's really helpful trying to navigate through this crazy life.
So, just to give you, for instance, number 45, and you guys know we're talking about Presidentes. You see Leo, the lion, and then you see Magha. And so this is the nakshatra of number 45. Again, the weight of what we give certain aspects in Western astrology to Vedic is different. So everybody asks you, what's your sign in Western astrology? And they're saying, what's your sun sign? But in Vedic astrology, the ascendant is more important. And there's more also placed on the moon as well, and the moon's influence on us. So everything is a little bit different. And you could go into a nakshatra reading and take hours to go through.
This is something I do when I do a chart. I give the nakshatra but I could do a whole reading on just a nakshatra because there's so much information about them, and they're very, very important, and they say a lot about who we are. And I remember when I had my first chart done, it was the nakshatra that she gave me was the spell breaker for me, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And for why that made everything okay in my life, I'm not sure. It was like a spell being broken, but it really helped me. So the important thing about the nakshatra is the time of birth. I mean, with a chart, I might be able to get by without the time, but I don't like to. I'd rather not do charts if we don't have the time. Now with the nakshatra, time is critical.
You have to know. Yeah, so things like, Saturn moves slowly, Jupiter moves slowly. So if you didn't have the exact time, like if you said, well, I think it was about 7 o'clock a.m., that could give you some things fairly accurate, but not everything, especially when we're talking about the nakshatra and the stuff that's moving faster. Again, Venus moves faster, Mercury moves faster. These things, timing is critical, and so you need the absolute timing. You need to know the place and the timing, and it has to be really precise. So there's the 27 nakshatras, and again, these are constellations which have a symbiotic relationship with each other, as you see Rohini here, and I'll let you go through them as I click.
Right. Well, this is Jyesta. It's not always the most popular one because Jyesta is known to be a little bit jealous.
They all have their own aspects.
Yes, they do. And Ashlesha, she is, I always like to call it a she. This is an indicator of a very strong kundalini, or somebody who has very strong intuition.
It's interesting. It's kind of linear, almost like I could see that this is kind of like a serpent's head and a serpent.
It is a serpent, yes.
Yeah, so it makes sense. And then Ardra, the archer.
Yes, Ardra is really important because Albert Einstein was born with Ardra very strong in his chart. Pushya, probably also one of my favorites. Pushya people are extremely nurturing. Whenever they give anything of themselves, they give it in a very nurturing way. Vishaka. Okay, Vishaka is not one that I have studied very much, but it is very intriguing. It's interesting, it's deep, and it's imaginative. So people with Vishaka do have a very good imagination. Purva Ashada, another really good one with information that's going to be very helpful to those who aren't quite sure about themselves. Purva Ashada can explain better the person's personality. Don't know Brighteon.
So when she has the ones that she doesn't know, she has to go back to her software and her programming, and this is why it does sometimes take a little bit longer with some than others. Magha, we were talking about in relation to number 45. Now, these are natural born leaders.
They are. Maghas are very natural born leaders. Now, they don't have to do anything to get that attention in life. Basically, they just have a charismatic way about them. When they walk in a room, they carry a magnetism about them that just says, I'm the leader, and mostly people just look to them naturally. You don't even have to know you're a Magha to really be Magha. Kritika. Kritika is also one of my favorites. Kritika is in the Pleiades constellation, and Kritika people are very powerful when it comes to protection. Dineshta, a very complicated one. Mike is Dineshta rising, and Dineshta does not beat to anybody's drum but their own. So what I see happening a lot of the time is people are very, very kind in sending us information. They want us to look it over and comment on it, but Mike, he's just always off on his own road. He wants to do his own thing. It's very important for him to express his creativity in a very unique way, aside from everyone else. So for that purpose, not because we don't want to look at other information, we just want to give our very clear and our very own perspective. Now, Dineshta is also ruled under the sign of Mars. I think there's about 8 different stars in Dineshta, and it's all ruled under Mars. So this is a very powerful nakshatra.
Yeah, and it's true. Yeah, because I think when we choose to come into our incarnation, we pick a time that is going to be most advantageous to that which we want to learn and that which we want to achieve. And in my case, I don't want to be influenced by anybody else. So I'll go and pick and sort through all the information, instead of reading, say, like a commentary on the Vedas. I want to read the Vedas themselves and form my own opinion. I don't want to take anybody else's opinion. And I've noticed that with a lot of very intuitive people. I've had friends as well, and Cindy really is not so book studied when it comes to a lot of the things that we do talk about. She leaves that to me. She does the intuitive aspect and contacting the guides.
Well, I don't know if I can just say in my own defense, I am dyslexic. It is very difficult for me to get in the books and absorb the information like most people. So yeah, the intuitive side of me has always been very naturally formed.
Yeah, exactly. So with the Bible, for instance, I read it all through at 11. Then I started to realize there's different versions. So back before we had the internet, I was just going out and buying up all the different versions. And then I might be cross-referencing myself with 10 different Bibles out there and looking for different interpretations and doing it on my own. I mean, I had a Strong's concordance at one point in time, but, I could see where they're trying to program you with a certain line of thinking, and I don't want to do that. I want to get to the core of it myself. And, from there it branched out into all the Eastern works, the Upanishads, the Vedas, Tao Te Ching, just the I Ching. It just goes on and on. And that's just part of my programming because of when I stepped into this matrix that I was going to be that way. And part of it is, too, because my bigger purpose is to show where there's congruence and where it's not about picking one particular path and sticking to it, even if it feels wrong later on. Again, we are spiritual beings having a physical existence, and so much of what has been given to us is pre-programmed. And my purpose here is to break the programming. That is my purpose, and to awaken people to their own potential, and then finding your own path and being a unique you. That's why I came into this life.
Mm-hmm. And this is Swati, and I am a Swati, and I could never really understand myself. And when the lady explained Swati to me and I did further study, it really, really helped me because my brain doesn't work like everyone else's. It's quite scattered, actually. Swati is an air sign, and usually air signs are very, very psychic. So it just helped me to understand that I get all of this information from various sources, and I don't always know where it's coming from. And this is just something that said, hey, you're different. And Swati is also the symbol is a blade of grass, and Swati, since it's ruled by the wind blows the blade of grass wherever it is needed. And that's sort of kind of been my life story. I go from here to here, and I just stay a while until I'm no longer needed, and then the wind comes and I go somewhere else. So it works really, really well.
And that's wonderful, because I'll drag her all over the globe at some point if we're able to. Yeah, if we were to have a normal time period, yeah. I mean, because I'm a gypsy at heart, and on my mother's father's side, they literally were gypsies, and did a lot of traveling. Also, it's so fascinating to see our tendencies. There is air all over Cindy. Cindy is so full of air. I'm not saying she's full of hot air, but it's an interesting mix. Now me, I'm all water, and it's emotional for the most part, but our mixes work together perfectly. And when you look to like human design, we just fit like a glove. And human design's another system of looking at things that takes a lot of things into consideration. But it's just fascinating to see this. And so I had a musical aversion at a young age. When I was a kid going to school and you had to take music class, it was my least favorite. I hated it. I hated it with a passion. And the reason is because in my previous life, that was all my entire life was music. So in order to not get caught up in what's comfortable and familiar to me, it was part of the timing of jumping through this matrix so that I wouldn't have the same natural inclinations, but we can still have it in our DNA that pops up, because, you know, we do learn from our experiences. We carry our experiences with us. We can't carry any physical things with us to the next life, but we carry our experiences.
That's right. So all of these things work together to kind of paint a more clear picture of who we really are, and hopefully we can get a good understanding of ourselves and find out, you know, how can I best live this life. And I think, you know, just nakshatra readings are really useful, providing you have the time, because I had one person, their time was 10 minutes off, and that totally changed their nakshatra, which changed everything. So you got to have the time.
Absolutely. And typically right now we're running about 2 to 3 weeks out as far as Vedic charts, just to let you guys know if you are interested in a Vedic chart. Just reach out to us at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail or EEARTS@protonmail.com with, you know, all the information. When we do sessions too, we ask a photo to focus on the person so we could send you energy a little bit more coherently. And again, these are snapshots, and in some instances it can really give you an idea, especially if you don't know, or you're wondering, you know, why am I here? What's my purpose? And, you know, for me, I didn't really discover my purpose until I was 42. I started to figure it out. Yeah, it started to make sense. And what's that? That's 6 returns, right? So, and there's so much to get into. You could just spend hours going into the ascendant and the nakshatra.
Yeah, if I can please very humbly say, I practice this. This is not something that you just learn. I mean, people spend lifetime after lifetime after lifetime learning this stuff. So I practice it. I do my best. I use a lot of my own intuition combined with other types of study to come up with the information that I bring. And also, when we do a chart, it's an automatic, it's like a soul realignment. It's a soul realignment with your star map, putting you back on track to where you were when you were born.
Absolutely. So hopefully you guys find this interesting. Again, you know, she could spend really over an hour just talking about your nakshatras. So typically, like on the nakshatra side, you know, if the entire reading takes about 60 minutes, it might be about 10 minutes that we cover the aspects of the nakshatra and move on. But if you wanted to just have a nakshatra reading, she could spend a whole hour just going over your nakshatra. There is so much information in here. It's amazing to comprehend really the intricacies of this incredible matrix that we live in, the interconnectedness of everything, because everything is so intertwined. And so much of this has been hidden from us purposefully, because, again, if you could just know right off the bat, well, why did I choose to come in here? And you look at your birth chart, and then you get a clear indicator of, you know, what you're supposed to do. Boy, you could get so much more done in life than if you're just basically wandering around for decades with no clear idea.
Well, sometimes it just simply helps. Say maybe even you do kind of understand, but sometimes it really helps to get that confirmation. It's like a double backing to know that you're on the right track.
You know, even in the greatest persecutions by the church on anything that was called witchcraft, they still always had royal astrologers. Yep. That was the one thing that they did not stop.
As definitely did Reagan.
Oh yeah, Reagan. I mean, this is something that goes down throughout history. You know, look at John Dee. He was the court astrologer, and you know, it just goes on and on throughout time. Very interesting stuff. As always, guys, thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. You know, reach out to us. Please do allow 2 to 3 weeks to get you scheduled, as again, each chart takes hours to put together. Much love, God bless, and namaste.
Namaste.